Welcome, readers of Nimrod and lovers of poetry and prose. My name is Boris Treluk, and I am the relatively new editor-in-chief of Nimrod International Journal at the University of Tulsa. Beside me in the ether are Hachi Chuku, our managing editor, and Stasha Cole, our graduate assistant, both gifted writers in their own right. Among my first pleasant editorial duties this past year was to read through the thousands of submissions we received for our annual awards, the Katherine Anne Porter Prize for Fiction and the Pablo Neruda Prize for Poetry. After making the initial selections for the long list, our team entrusted the final selections to our esteemed judges, Kelly Link and Paisley Rekdal, who have been immensely gracious throughout this process. Today we are joined by both judges as well as by our two first prize winners. I will introduce today's guests, and then we will hear our winners read. Paisley Rekdal recently served as the Poet Laureate of Utah and currently directs the American West Center at the University of Utah. She holds the NMFA from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and is the author of 7 poetry collections, including most recently West, a translation, which won the Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award. She has also authored a terrific book of essays, The Night My Mother Met Bruce Lee, Observations on Not Fitting In, the photo text memoir Intimate, the book-length essays The Broken Country and Appropriate a Provocation, as well as a much-anticipated, by me and recently out, Guide to the Perplexed, titled Real Toads, Imaginary Gardens, on Reading and Writing Poetry Forensically. And if I start listing the places where her work has appeared and her other prizes, we'll never get on with the show, so welcome Paisley, and thank you. Kelly Link, who was born in Miami, Florida, currently lives in Northampton, Massachusetts, and owns an independent bookstore in East Hampton called Book Moon, which is just about the best thing a human being can do to help the world these days. She is one of the leading voices in Anglophone fiction writ large, but is especially admired and beloved for her graceful evasion of borders between genres. She is the author of the collections Stranger Things Happen, Magic for Beginners, Pretty Monsters, Get in Trouble, and White Cat, Black Dog, as well as most recently of the novel The Book of Love, which has received praise from all quarters. Her stories have been featured in the Best American Short Stories and the O. Henry Awards, and among her accolades is a 2018 MacArthur Fellowship. So she's a genius. Welcome, Kelly, and thank you. Our first prize winners are, drumroll, Jonathan Diaz and Allison Krupp. Jonathan is a poet and an assistant professor of English at Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California. He holds an MFA in poetry from the University of Notre Dame and is a PhD candidate in English at Baylor University. His poetry appears or is forthcoming from Agni, Beloit Poetry Journal, and Huizache, and of course Nimrod. Welcome, Jonathan, and many congratulations. Allison is an author of twisty literary fiction, horror, and short fiction, originally from Indiana. She is now based in Berlin, but she began her extraordinarily successful and rather mysterious ghostwriting career a decade ago in Paris, which serves as a setting of her literary horror novel. Welcome, Allison, and many congratulations. The first thing I'll ask is for Kelly perhaps to say a few words about the judging process and about Allison's work in particular.
Thank you very much. I will speak very briefly. I loved the reading that I did for this prize. I always love this kind of reading, the idea that I am going to encounter writers that I don't know, to be reminded of the possibilities of the short story. Swamp City, I knew that I loved. I will read you one sentence because I loved it so much, and this is the place where I began to fall in love with the story. It's late, inky, black, and wet, orange street lamps, splotchy on train tracks like used floss. And I love this story because it felt to me like it was showing me the contemporary world in a way that I had not seen it. I loved it because the characters in it felt like messy, complicated thinking and feeling people. And I loved it for the texture of the language that I did not only fall in love with the characters in it and became invested in what they were thinking, feeling, doing, but I loved it for what it did with language. And this is to me what a good story does, is that it is about people or feelings that I recognize, but told in a way where I'm not only interested in those, but I'm also interested in the things that language is capable of. So thank you very much for your short story.
Thank you, Kelly. And now I'll ask Allison to share a bit of her short story.
Thank you so much. All right. Frau Schnitzler passes out flyers at preschool pickup. The big sink is coming. Prepare yourselves. It's sloppy calligraphy and Declaration of Independence theatrics, followed by a list of instructions in French, English, German. Number 1, get to higher ground. I crumple the paper into the bottom shelf of Remy's stroller, rags crisp with dried spit up and splats of granola and unused diapers. Frau Schnitzler watches me. Patchy blood orange Peter Pan haircut, jaundice gleam. It's rare to meet someone who cares. She should be fired for peddling conspiracies. Home. Michael peels potatoes at the kitchen counter, skin unfurling from decadent yellow bulbs. Remy in her high chair, banana and avocado beard, dark brown ringlet curls, none of Michael's lemon coloring, hair like melting sherbet to his shoulders. I mean, Berlin is sinking a little bit more every year. I sit at the kitchen table and tug my damp socks from my toes, pinch the big one hard. A high-pitched shot of pain comes a second too late. I told you to wear my boots. Michael gathers the potatoes in a colander like a farm girl collecting chicken eggs. It's winter now. Michael loves to say facts aloud. It's winter. This bakery raised their prices. It has been 8 weeks since we last had sex. Remy squawks, and Michael curls over her to sputter kisses along her neck and tickle her till she rattles with laughter. I watch them, my toes throbbing like a frog's heartbeat, until Michael unshackles her from her high chair and changes her in the room we painted lilac, singing a German nursery rhyme I don't know. It's late, inky black and wet, orange street lamps blotchy on tram tracks like used floss. I walk south down Warschauer Straße and cower under the still unfinished Amazon Tower. Empty offices all lit up, sutured with gaudy scaffolding. A cubism Christmas tree. Pink tubes rise and loop from the construction site, throw themselves toward the East Side Gallery and onward toward the river. It's groundwater, Michael told me once. Berlin's a swamp. They have to keep it in place as they build it up. When I ask why pink, 60 kilometers of silly string across a predominantly gray city, he said, they made a study. Children like the color most. I drop down the staircase by the mall and loop around the construction site. Although the pink tubes are too high to climb, my thighs scream to lope over them, my arms itch to hang. I imagine myself a tightrope walker, toe heel as I glide along the pink piping, surge of water just beneath my soul. There was a club around here once. We are always saying this. I remember it as torsos slick as dewy car windows, meaty tongues tangy with coke and rank with nicotine, straining, pumping, rooms black and alive and throbbing like organs. I traced the pink tubes to the entrance, a bouncer. It's still here. My beard too empty, jeans too tight on my thighs, tips of my fingers on the brick wall outside, vibrations through my knuckles, my wrist, my elbow. A mile away, Michael waiting like the oven left on. I said I'd buy us both beers. A man emerges from the club and staggers through the darkness, hair like a burning bush, torso a ballerina's. I am jealous of the fluid way he draws his shoulders back into a cat arch, sews his cigarette between his lips, just a breath above the surface before diving back in. He contemplates the Amazon Tower, spews steam, and spits at its feet. He feels my gaze and glances back. Here's the dull chest punch of recognition. We've met before. Edgar uses his cigarette as a conductor would, swirls the red notch. Can you believe this shit? As taut as a violinist string, I sing, ugliest thing I've ever seen. Anything for progress, huh? He cuts a dimple for me and grinds his cigarette beneath his toe. I am rapt as he rolls another cigarette and passes it to me. It feels beyond me to dismiss Edgar's cigarette, but I think of Remy's soft cry of good morning, my breath and nightmare baptism upon her buttercream rolls. I think of the way her yawn drowns her face. I quit. Edgar sniffs. I heard that's not all you did. There's a hissing. I think it's coming from inside the house, so to speak. Tinnitus from 12 plus years of playing gigs and clubbing. I am a half-cracked bottle of Coke. But Edgar twitches toward the pink tube like a rabbit in the center of the road. The fuck is that? We walk toward the pipe. I bang my beer bottle against my thigh until I align myself with him. The stink of the club, the bodies, the ache. The hissing is louder, a full-on tizzy fit. Edgar's mother's kettle on Christmas Eve 8 years ago. 2 bolts spring from the pink tube like eyeballs popping from a cartoon character in love. They drop to the cement. For a moment, there's silence, and I feel it, the urgent desire to glide my fingers through Edgar's, not unlike flitting them across a field of wheat. Then the burst. Water, more than I've seen all at once, rips the pipes apart. Within seconds, it's to our ankles, a siren like a fingernail through my eardrum. We splash toward the staircase and whip toward Warschauer Strasse, where we hover over the bridge, gasping for breath, observing the gush. We watch the news all week to make sense of it. German newscaster with a yellow helmet haircut, our modern Orson Welles. Michael wide-legged on the floor, fingers taut spiders on the Turkish rug, Remy on her stomach between his calves. I refill mugs with coffee that go rank and cold and switch to beer too soon. Although I watch his face for clues, the twitch at the sharp cheekbone, eyes like lighthouses on a tumultuous horizon, Michael will not say he's scared. It's the same relaying of facts. 12 pink pipes burst across the city, from Treptower Park to the Tiergarten, Tempelhoferfeld to Wedding. Too much construction, maybe, too much growth. Der Riss is what they're calling it, a crack, a rift. We haven't left our block since it happened, but photos circulate. Geologists dismiss the idea, but it's as though there is a tectonic shift directly at the Ringbahn, the train that encircles the city. Berlin sifts downward like flour in a measuring cup. 15 centimeters below sea level, Michael reports, and losing a few more every day. Maybe it will stop, I say. We haven't taken Remy out since it happened. She's cooped up, Play-Doh hands rattling the balcony window, skin the sour leftovers in a pickle jar. I think of the list of instructions from a preschool teacher, unfurl it from the paper recycling, and read instructions 2 through 4. 2. Stockpile dried fruits and vegetables and cured meats. 3. Beware of borrowed trauma, breathe deeply. 4. Insert image here. No one answers at the preschool when I call. Frau Schnitzler has no online presence. I joke to Michael she's an oracle. He reminds me people have died. The refrigerator is empty, and I walk down streets with a tint of swamp air, a water glass that has been left on a counter for too long. Most cafes and bars are latched shut, but traditional German Kneipen remain open. Smoke shivers from door frames to knit itself into the fog. An old man on the corner smiles at me, teeth like Indian corn, says something about the weather, and sputters with laughter. Wir gehen unter. He says it the way Edgar used to tell me he loved me, a hilarious tragedy. In the hour-long line at the grocery store, I acknowledge my phone stack of unread messages from Edgar. I no longer know where he lives, but it's not hard to picture him, a shivery come down, a fetus around his 15-year-old MacBook, philosophizing der Riss with matches from dating apps. Not unlike all the times he cheated on me. Behind me in line are girls from France who stuffed their baskets with Lebkuchen, green cheeses, and spits of spring onions. In front of me is a man in a cowboy hat and blue sweatpants with a wet stain on the ass. He is buying sugar-free Jell-O, 14 boxes of it. What do you think of all this? Cowboy asks me in a Scandinavian accent. I shrug. Cowboy eyes the condoms lodged between the frozen pizza boxes and cured sausages. I see you got your priorities straight. Why the jello? His face is stony. Good a time as ever to lose weight. Michael makes the appointment with the real estate agent when we're 2 feet under. The house is in East Brandenburg, jewel-colored pool, basement sauna, shutterless windows like lashless eyes. It is better to raise children in nature, Michael says, for their health. I make a big show of packing the diaper bag. The foundation of the apartment crackles like a dock on the ocean. Slats of our wooden floor shift. A bottle snaps from my hand to the kitchen floor. Milky burst. Fuck. I crouch to stamp a red kitchen towel over the stain. Inhale a sour bubble of air. I just remembered. I have a meeting. I tell him Dervis is a boon for illustrators. Newspapers and influencers and environmentalist groups crave to show what simple photographs cannot. They want creative projections, beautiful devastation. Remember what you said. More clients, more capital. I wring the towel over the sink like it's a chicken's neck. Remy's fuchsiaed. Michael's irises crystallize when I parrot him. Here's a kiss long and deep. Should I reschedule the viewing? I tell him I trust him. We don't have much time. On the news, there's a 2-foot-tall waterfall on the River Spree between Jungfernheide and Westend. Inflatable rings, paddle and surfboards, rafted mattresses float to the edge and nosedive, their cargo beer-bellied pre-pension punks flinging sterny, girls in spangly bras, braying dogs. All this in January. Someone ties his raft to a tree on shore and plays techno. Ripples from the music are swallowed into the falls. Michael sends what must be 57 photographs of the country house, its yellow fields and young forests. Remy with her fingers caked in mud. Phone vibrations shiver in my pants pocket on the floor. Edgar rolls a cigarette and flecks of tobacco float across the dense curls of my chest. He says it. We are better at sex than before. Thinking of Michael carrying Remy through a sun-dappled wood, I'd forced his hand around my neck and he'd squeezed, dimming the world, dappling it with black spots. Can't believe you had a kid. Edgar puffs perfect smoke rings. It's not like it was a fucking mistake. I want to tell him that mistakes aren't the same as accidents, that they take longer to reveal themselves. I put on boxers and call Michael from Edgar's bathroom. Razor blade crackly with dried blood by the faucet, bar of soap scribbled with pubes. Michael answers on the third ring and says the competition for the place is fierce. He offered, went higher than he'd planned. I can see us here. It's a daydream entirely un-Michael-like, caught up in the affairs of the heart. And then it will need a new roof before next winter. We must be wary of the house guild. It can be steep. I think that was 12 minutes. I can be done.
It was perfect. Thank you
Okay.
very much. It was perfectly timed, but also perfect prose. Thank you very much, Allison. And now I think I'd like to invite Paisley to say a little bit about her selection of Jonathan's work.
Yeah,
So I'll open her up here in just a minute. There she is.
Yeah, hi. So I will also be brief. This was a lot of fun to judge because, and also difficult because all of the finalists that were sent to me were so good. And in fact, it's one of the rare times where I actually would suggested publishing some other people that came in really close. So I got to spend a few days going back and forwards between the different finalists because I liked so many of the words so much. But Jonathan's really stood out as soon as I read them because it's very rare that you get poetry that is sonically rich, emotionally rich, and intellectually rich. Usually one, unfortunately, gets a little sacrifice to elevate the other virtues. But as soon as I read Jonathan's work, I was thinking, here is an intricate sort of environmental story, a family story. It's done beautifully in terms of the muscularity of the lines. I was so taken with that voice. And so I just kept returning back and back and back, and the pleasures just kind of kept increasing. So it's a delight to read him, and I look forward to reading more of your work, Jonathan.
Thank you very much for that, Paisley, and welcome, Jonathan. I just have to say that it was a great pleasure to read through the entire group of submissions and to select 10 strong poets. And I know that Paisley isn't exaggerating when she says that we had a lot of great submissions this year. So you should feel especially honored.
Well, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for that generous introduction, Paisley. I'm thrilled, and was thrilled to see you judging this after reading, a lot of your work, but especially your September, October poems in American Poetry Review were just stunning, real inspiration to me. Thank you. I'm going to read 4 poems from a portfolio of some poems. This is the first of them. It's called The Rivers. Every story I've ever been told has had a river in it. The one the newborn prophet bobbed in, the one the mole and the water rat bobbed down. The river I was born by, the San Gabriel, barely flows most of the year, seeping from patch of weeds to patch of weeds, a thin green line in the concrete trough. The one the runaways rafted on, the one the pilgrim bathed in to be made whole. I wanted nothing like I wanted to feel a full, clean current on my skin, to drink from cupped hands on the bank and listen to the rapids washed out hum. The one a poet called a strong brown god, the one as deep as another poet's soul. I chased each creek I could into the foothills, stepping in shallows the whole way. My brother taught me to sink stones into the bed to swell a stream for swimming. The one which washes memory away, the one which very nearly brings it back. We swam for hours until we heard a sound that either was or was not gunfire. We waited, but when we saw others running for their cars, we followed them. The one lit needfully aflame, the one where the woman of the water sings. This poem is called Blast Fishing. I never had much luck casting my line from the gravel rim into the reservoirs, stocked yearly with struggling fry, so we'd think living things still churned our city's waters. In Tecpatan, you had no use for rod or line. It was need, not leisure, that took you to the river. You said there were 3 ways to harvest enough fish after a full day among the crops. The first was gunfire. It was easy, but still you only got 1 fish at a time. One time I pleaded to be left with you to go fishing the next day in Echo Park. We settled on the concrete shore with bamboo poles and sunk our baited hooks beneath the scum. The second was poison. A trickle laced into the current, and soon silver bellies would bob up to the surface. Good yield, but there's only so much venom you can eat. In Spanish, we distinguish between the fish in its habitat and out of it. Pez y pescado, the fish and the fished. Things change when grasped in hunger. Leaving the park, you gave our catch away, saying only, they feed on the bodies. The third was the best. Pescábamos con bomba, a bottle plugged with powder, thrown from the bank, and you would shield your face against the spray, its muffled thunderclap. Years later, the city emptied out the lake. Despite the rumors, they found no corpses, only a few pistols, thrown in after some outburst of desire or fury made them fire. I can almost taste the meal you would have made, the flaked flesh seething saltpeter and sulfur. This poem is called Yomono. Rivers, too, are begotten, either in the bright summit of snowpack or otherwise hidden in silent lakes beneath the burdened earth. The river Yomono, meaning woman of the water, emerges from the ground to feed the Totopak, flowing through my grandfather's finca, irrigating the crops and blessing his inheritance with her name, San Cristobal Yomono. In the reign of Moctezuma, not the one you've heard of, brackish waters flooded the Tenochtitlan so often that he sent word to Netzahualcoyotl, who said the gods did not desire the blood of sacrifices, but the consecrated hunger of a fast. Before the Blackfriars came to Tecpatan, generations of my people watched the stream, the furrow in its flow when interrupted by piled stones, the sheen of the same stones when pulled out from the riverbed, the light along the thousand facets of the fluid gem. They went to the river, seeking increase for the cacao, fish for their table, and clear drink for their thirst. Netzahualcoyotl, king of Texcoco, oversaw the construction of a levee to separate the waters from the waters. He had the men sink logs into the lake bed and fill the gaps with soil. The flooding stopped, and the waters of the city grew sweet to taste. Listen, thirst is the very essence of need. So each day they asked the river Yomono to kill their need with miraculous satisfaction. But other voices cried out just as urgently. Every town near the finca was growing, and each one needed electricity. To pull power from the current, they flooded the Totopak. They named the dam Netzahualcoyotl and clasped his fasting collar on the woman of the water. New jobs and wired homes sprung up in the valley when the waters entombed the church in Quechua, the ancient ball courts that the Olmecs left, and every hectare of my people's land. And in this way, our exile began. This last poem is called Language Attrition. It has an epigraph from Dante, which means of the two, meaning languages, the nobler is the common, which was the first used by humankind. Harum quoque duarum nobilior est vulgaris, dum quia prima fuit humano generi usitat. 1. Nestled in smoke on the 4th of July, I watch flames rise, shatter, and resound. I dub them luces go pop. English encroaches, taking the predicate first. The subjects can't hold out for long. When the smoke clears, our flag is not there. 2. Past the plantain trees and cacate, through the door frame grown rubbery with coats of paint, through the door into the kitchen that is too small for all the prayer in it. It is a good thing to speak out loud, but I am silent, just listening to the testimonies spilling against the tiles. My whole gathered family can name when God first spoke to them and how his word transformed them utterly. I don't remember starting to believe any more than I remember starting to speak, and I can't remember what language I used for either one. What then should I testify? 3. When the Nahuas established a new king, they sat him on a mat of reeds, and they did not call him king but Tlatoani, the one who speaks. A priest would ask him if certain calamities would befall the people, to which he, and all the people echoing his voice, would reply, no. 4. I learned from long study that there are two kinds of language, the kind learned from long study and the nobler kind, learned without effort, from your mother's voice. When you told me you sometimes feel guilty, that your thoughts come out more clearly in English than in Cantonese, I confess to feeling the same way about Spanish. What does it say about us? I asked, that we stumble in our mother tongues and retreat into artifice. 5. The praise of God is long, even longer when you are unskilled at praising. At 12 years old, who isn't? My mind wanders as the kitchen continues to shudder, with groanings too deep for words that nonetheless emerge as speech. The only way through is to rehearse. In my head, before I start to pray, first, invocation. Señor Jesucristo, nuestro Dios Todopoderoso. Then, remembrance. Sabemos que eres fiel, que protegiste a David de las garras del león y las garras del oso. Next comes petition. But I struggle to know what I should want. The prayers go on. To kill the time, I list the things I see. Abuelito, abuelita, papá, mamá, mesa, vaso, silla. I spot the door and prepare to name it, but no word comes to mind. I must have said it like a dozen times this week alone. Cierra-la, abre-la. Nothing vaster than the absence I grasp when reaching for the word. 6. Will a strong enemy defeat us? Will our people vanish from the earth? Will the account be overdrawn? Will the engine overheat? Will the police come to our door? Will we fail to find work? Will time swallow up the name of our ancestral land? Will the payment be lost in the mail? Will the fig tree fail to blossom? Will the flock be cut off from the fold? Will the waters close above us? Will the waters close again above us? No. 7. Hey, hold up. Say something in Spanish for me. Whoa, not bad. You're like all Mexican? Mom and your dad? Then how come in English you sound like such a white boy? Pocho, no sabo. Just different ways to say vendido. Mientras que te estabas quejando, otra familia se ahogó en ese río que conoces como grande. Canta y no llores. Llorarás ahora por otra espada que abrirá su herida. 8. I barely remember anymore what it was like to think of something and take a straight path from the thought to the Spanish word. I was a child still when I began to take detours through English. Only twice in 10 years have I evaded translation. Both times it was the surprise of a living thing that returned my mother tongue to me. Stepping into the shower, araña. Smoking on my back porch, lacuache. But not once have I been startled enough to say, huitzilin. Never seeing a blood-bright flash among green leaves and a rapid flurry of small wings have I said, suksu. 9. After the last amen, I go through the doorway into the garden and it arrives. Puerta. I vow to claw back every word I can. Puerta, if I forget you, let my hands forget their skill. Into the night I go praying, while a black wind falls from mountain pines to stir the palm trees in the valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And one of the benefits of this prize is that we're able to feature, not only to consider, but to feature the whole sweep of these poems, because to my mind, at least, not only because of their reference to mythical figures, but because of the great scope of your topics, they really take on an epic proportion in toto, and it's a really great pleasure to be able to showcase the whole of that epic sweep in the journal. And now we have a special treat. I would like to invite Paisley back to present some of her work, her award-winning book and project, West. So I'm going to invite her back up.
All right. Let me do the full screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a few poem videos. I was asked to write a poem to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad's completion. So what I wanted to do was actually create a poem, a digital poem that you can play, and I will put the address in the chat, so it's sort of a free book that everyone can get. I won't play the opening video because you'd hear the poem read, but I take a Chinese poem that was carved into the walls of Angel Island Immigration Station, and I translate that poem character by character into the story of the American impact of the Transcontinental Railroad, or the railroad in general, on America. So there's a whole bunch of different options that you can take and things like that. I'll just play a few videos and then you can play it on your own. But the reason I wanted to do this is obviously I wanted to highlight the Chinese contribution to the railroad. I myself am half Chinese. I also wanted to think about this as a kind of paired event. The Transcontinental, while it was being built, relied heavily on Chinese labor, but as soon as it was built, the Chinese Exclusion Act was put into law. And that Chinese Exclusion Act was something that very much affected my family. It's one of the longest. It lasted from 1889 to 1942. And it was one of the first laws that targeted a specific ethnic national group from entering the country. So I'll play some happy poems, some sad poems, some sadly newly relevant poems too. But I'll start with one of my favorite ones, which is Sexy Time poem. And I'll put in the closed captioning too, just in case. Let me see. I don't know why it's not working. Wait.
What day? On this 7th day of the 7th month, magpies bridge in a cluster of black and white. The Sky King crosses to meet his queen, time tracked by the close-knit wheeling of stars. I watch. You come to me tonight, drunk on wine and cards, nails ridged black with opium to ease the pain of work. We are all men here. Anybody can be a bridge, little raven. Your eyes squeezed shut, but not from pain. We are a trestle, a grade we build together. What matter if you say you'd never choose me, were there women willing in this desert? I chose. I choose the memory we share of rivers, your hair of smoke and raw, wet leather. A man in another man's hand makes himself tool or weapon, says the overseer, as if a man's use to another is only one of work. Pleasure is the only chosen future. You are the home I briefly make, the country I can return to. Here, where the moon wheels its white shoulder in the dark, and you push me to the earth, slip my whiskered tip of hair into your mouth.
I played that for the Utah governor, and I'm really proud of that one. Anyway, seem to like it. Okay, I'll play a couple that I think that are sort of newly and sadly relevant.
Not. Dennis Carney, Speeches, 1878. I am not a railroad king, banker, professor, bummer, politician. Under their flag of slaveholder, they have rallied, and we permitted them to grow rich. They have loaded down our nation with debt. They have stolen public lands, by their unprincipled greed brought distress on millions. They, who have resources enough to feed, clothe, and shelter the entire human race. We propose now to take charge. The press will say I am a common Irishman. Good. I am a working man, too, like you, who did not come here as English, Scotch, Dutch, or Irish, not Catholic either, Protestant or infidel. Let there be no sects. We are white working men who will elect the hard-fisted, obscure artisans, coopers, bank smashers. If the legislature oversteps human decency, then rope will be our battle cry. White men, women, girls, and boys will not compete with the mechanics of the market. The Chinese must leave our shores. None but an idiot would hope to work as cheap. None but a slave make the effort. Death is preferable to life on par with these. We make no secret of our intentions. We can discuss if it would be better to hang, shoot, or cut the capitalists to pieces later. Money is always on alert to divide us. But as I walk under this starless heaven, still I know Mars holds its course, Venus whirls in flashing fields of light. Thus it is with a movement of our kind. We are working men, and we will exhibit ourselves when the time is right. Not in lowliness or in shame, but splendor, alive in our true and native powers.
Anywhere and everywhere. You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us. You will not replace us.
Yep. So I will play a couple more videos and then I'll read one last one. This is a happier one. One of the things that I found so interesting was how the Transcontinental Railroad affected Hollywood, and it actually created all of these movies just for women.
Heroic. Helen Holmes, The Hazards of Helen. Victim? Tie me up to Tressler Bridge, I bristle, buck, saw through blunt bindings, swing and shimmy to ease myself down burnished poles. Bold, cold, heroic. Lock me inside your clerk's closet, I'll pick its double lock. Duck the huckster's ill-timed shot, tackle robbers in the boxcar. Intrepid, I ride astride slender waist rails, uncouple cars, and mount runaways. I turn all tails to heads, begin each film fired, despised, till I solve all crises I alone saw coming. I get my men. My fans are manifests now of different destinies. The West is a dead end for those with frailty inbuilt to their machinery. Men here hit the skids, lost it all on stocks, cows, cards, slots, topped out and constrained by history. But I'm still speculative, exciting, my amplitude, the endless futurity to which my sex has always been traveling. That's why strangers eat me up in the dark, laugh when I grab the robber's mitt, the ones snatching at your heartstrings, my leather valise. Now I bring my mouth down to his wrist to take a bite that only looks like a kiss.
And I will end on one final poem, and that is it. I like this one because all of the photographs you see actually come from my grandfather's photo album. So it's kind of a very personal poem, even as it's a persona poem.
Heart. I remember the boy who called me dirty, and the French women who hissed pauvre petite as I passed on the street. And I remember the girl like me at school who pasted her face with white paint and blacked her brows to pass, she said, as Mexican. I remember everything for which I was made to feel ashamed. Even the fact my father said I would never make half the woman my mother was because of my heart, which the doctor now calls unusually large. Memory is the weakness I bear on my own. I come from a race on my mother's side said to be the most stolid and insensible, yet feels so keenly alive to suffering. It hurts to hear the words strangers use for Chinese shopkeepers, or watch the Chinamen here laugh when I say I am of their race. I, who but for a few phrases remain unacquainted with my mother tongue. I have the name my English father gave me, and I look like my father. I could be loved if I lived as if I were like him too, but I prefer the name I have invented for myself. I want the world to see my mother in me, regardless if the Chinese have no souls. I do not need a soul. It is not my soul in question here, in these hot glances, these furious whispers. Why care for love when I do not know if I should love others in return? Love is a white loneliness that swells the heart and shuts me out from pleasure. What is there for one like me to do but wander, a pioneer traveling between west and east, myself the link they threaten to destroy between them? I do not need a name on legal papers. Here is a match. Here is the mirror in which my pale face burns its flickering allegiances. My soul is everywhere on my person. I lose nothing of myself that has not already disappeared.
And that is it. And if you're interested, I will put the web address in the thing so you guys can play with it and see the other things as well.
Well, thank you very much, Paisley, and thank you, everyone. I could see also so many interactions and interpenetrations between the work that was shared today, not only between Paisley's and Jonathan's on the question of language attrition and belonging, but also questions of ecological responsibility that ally Allison's work with Jonathan's. It's really a pleasure to have put this together with your help, and I want to thank you again and congratulate you again on a job extremely well done. We all look forward to more of your work in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.